Okay, so get this. Imagine trying to pick, like, the next Google, right? Out of this massive, like, sea of startups, tons of them. Right. Well, that is exactly what Mattermark was trying to do, but with a
A
twist.
very data-driven twist.
Exactly. They were all about using, like, cold, hard data to make smarter investment decisions instead of just relying on, gut feelings.
And that was huge, especially back then, like the early 2010s. Think about it. The startup scene was exploding, right? Venture capital was suddenly flooded with like all these new companies, and investors were kind of desperate for like reliable information.
So Mattermark swoops in with this radical idea. It was like they were bringing like a high-powered telescope to a world that was used to navigating by the stars.
Perfect analogy. They were shining a light on what was essentially a black box.
So walk us through it. What did they actually build?
Okay, so picture this. They created this platform, right? Think of it like almost like a giant, constantly updating database. It tracked every single move a startup made.
Every move. Like what kind of stuff?
We're talking funding rounds, growth metrics, team size, even how much buzz they were generating online, you name it.
Wow, it's like they were keeping tabs on every breath these startups took, huh?
Basically. But it wasn't just about like hoarding data, it was about making that data useful for investors. One of the things they were really keen on was website traffic growth.
Makes sense. More traffic, more interest.
Exactly. A sharp, sustained increase in people visiting a startup's website. That's often a very strong indicator of growing interest in their product or service. But they didn't just stop there.
Oh, there's more.
Oh, yeah. Their algorithms dug even deeper. They were analyzing social media sentiment, tracking how often a startup was being mentioned in a positive light. They were looking for those early signals of excitement and traction that, traditional investors might miss.
Wow, so they weren't just looking at numbers, they were trying to gauge
Yeah.
the vibe, the feeling around a company.
Exactly. They were reading the digital tea leaves, looking for those subtle patterns and signals that revealed which companies were genuinely connecting with their audience.
That's impressive, but also seems like a crazy amount of work.
It would have been impossible for humans to do manually, but Mattermark, they automated the entire process.
Oh, so instead of a team of like 1,000 interns combing through spreadsheets.
Exactly. They built algorithms, almost like a tireless team of digital analysts working around the clock to crunch those numbers and spot those trends.
So investors could just log in and boom, get a real-time snapshot of a startup's potential. That's game-changing.
It was a huge shift. Mattermark provided a level of transparency and insight that had never been seen before in the world of venture capital.
They were pulling back the curtain, so to speak.
Exactly. And that was incredibly disruptive.
But it wasn't all smooth sailing for Mattermark, was it? I mean, no story is really that good.
You're right, it's true. And those bumps in the road, they actually offer some of the most valuable lessons, I think.
So what kind of bumps are we talking about?
Well, one of the biggest hurdles Mattermark faced, was becoming, well, kind of overly reliant on the venture capital market itself. You see, when that market took a dip, Mattermark really felt it.
Ah, I see. It's like they put all their eggs in one basket. And when that basket, well, when it tipped.
Exactly. They were so focused on serving this one specific market, and when that market slowed down, it left them vulnerable.
It's a classic case of don't put all your eggs in one basket. Even when you think you found a gold mine, it's crucial to think about diversification.
Absolutely. And, that wasn't the only challenge they encountered. They had some growing pains, you could say, especially internally, like trying to manage their own rapid growth.
Oh, right, because they were one of those, like, rocket ship growth stories,
Yeah.
right? Everyone wants that, but I'm guessing it's not as easy as it sounds.
Not at all. Scaling a business, you see, it's not just about getting tons of new customers or increasing revenue like crazy. It's about building a really solid foundation that can actually handle all that growth. And
And Mattermark struggled with that.
yeah, they did. They hit a few snags. You see, they went from this relatively small team to a much larger operation, and it happened really quickly. And it seems they underestimated how complex that kind of hypergrowth can be, especially when it came to maintaining the quality of their data and their platform.
That makes sense. It's like you can have the best car in the world, but if the engine can't handle the speed, it's not going to end well. So what went wrong exactly? Did they expand too fast?
In some ways, yeah, I think that's part of it. It's like, remember how we talked about Mattermark's algorithms, how those
Yeah.
were like their secret sauce?
Right, right.
Well, those algorithms were only as good as the data they were fed. And as they grew, they expanded into new areas and ensuring that the data remained accurate and relevant and, free from bias, it became a much bigger challenge.
So it's not just about collecting more and more data. It's about making sure that the data you are collecting is actually valuable data, the right data.
Exactly. Data isn't some, unchanging thing. It's constantly evolving. It's like, imagine trying to navigate a new city, right, with an outdated map.
Yeah, that wouldn't get you very far. You'd end up totally lost.
Precisely. And that's kind of what happened to Mattermark. They were pioneers, truly, in this world of data-driven analysis, but the startup world, it's always changing, always evolving.
So what they were looking at wasn't necessarily wrong. It's just the game had changed a bit.
Yeah, you could say that. The signals, they weren't as reliable as they once were, you see. And, well, that's a crucial lesson for anyone working with data, no matter what you're doing, really. You can't just set it and forget it,
You constantly have to adapt and learn.
Yes. Data is dynamic. It's not a one-time thing.
So did Mattermark, were they able to adapt
Yeah.
to, get back on course?
Well, that is a fantastic question, and it gets to the heart of why I think Mattermark's story is so fascinating, because you see, it's not just a tale of success, it's also a cautionary reminder that even with the best of intentions, and really innovative ideas and a solid data-driven approach, well, there are always valuable lessons to be learned, often from our stumbles, I think.
I like that. Sometimes the best lessons come from the mistakes, right?
Yeah. Exactly. They help us grow, they add depth to our experience. And Mattermark's story, well, their struggles, they offer some really valuable insights for anyone, but especially those who are, looking to work with data and really harness its power.
Okay, I'm hooked. I need to hear more about these insights, these valuable lessons. Give me the good stuff.
One of the, I think, biggest takeaways here from Mattermark is the importance of really understanding data, like data literacy.
Data literacy.
Yeah. It's not just about collecting a ton of data. It's about understanding, what it all means, where it comes from, how to actually use it.
It's like having a giant library, right?
Yeah.
But if you can't read, those books aren't doing you much good.
Perfect analogy. That's it. Exactly. Mattermark, they had all this data, tons of it. But as the startup scene, it kept changing. They weren't always able to keep up, to really make sense of it all.
They didn't adapt fast enough.
Exactly. And that's the key, right? Recognizing that data, it's not static. It's not this one-time thing. It's constantly changing.
Always evolving, yeah.
Yes. And you got to evolve with it, right? You have to be willing to adjust, to learn, to question your own assumptions.
So it's not enough to be data-driven. You have to be data-informed.
Yes. 1,000 times, yes. That's what Mattermark, they kind of missed. They were doing great, but the world changed, and they weren't always able to keep up.
It happens. So, okay, I have to ask, did anything good come out of Mattermark?
Oh, absolutely. Even though they weren't ultimately successful themselves, they were pioneers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They were some of the first to really see the potential of data in this space in venture capital. And even though their journey had its bumps, they inspired a lot of other companies, a lot of other investors to really think differently.
So they lit a fire.
Yes. And I think the really interesting thing about Mattermark is that it's not just about startups or venture capital. Their story, it has lessons for everyone, for anyone who's trying to make sense of data.
We're all swimming in data these days, right? So these lessons, they apply to all of us.
100%. Mattermark's journey, it reminds us that success in this data-driven world, it requires more than just technical skills, You need to understand the data, you need to be flexible, and you got to be ready to adapt.
Yeah, be ready for anything.
Exactly. Data can be a powerful tool, but you have to be willing to learn and evolve alongside it.
I love that. Well, on that note, a huge thank you to you for this deep dive into the world of Mattermark. It's been a wild ride.
My pleasure.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this journey. Remember, the data is out there, and it's telling a story. The question is, are you listening?